Welcome to what I guess is the newest episode of the Needless Things podcast. We've been on hiatus for almost 2 years now. No, over 2 years now. But we're back because there's stuff to talk about, and I want to get down to business. We've got some guests here tonight to discuss the recently wrapped Max. It's hard for me to not say HBO Max because Max just sounds dumb. The recently wrapped Max series, The Penguin. I could not have a better panel of experts, unless, of course, the other two people that are supposed to be here had shown up. But for the time being, we're going to forge ahead. And if the Cadavers do make an appearance, we'll bring them on in. But first, I want to introduce Needless Things senior Batmanologist. Howdy, Mike Gordon.
Howdy. It's been a long time, my friend. I'm glad to. I was so excited for the invite. Yes, very surprised and pleasantly so.
Well, the last time we spoke via one of these things, I think was the Dragon Con report, which
probably.
I was surprised to realize a couple of years ago never actually ends. You guys just do that always.
No, actually, well,
is there a time off for you?
Yes, yeah. We're going to be recording our last one of the year this coming week.
Okay.
And usually we do one wrap-up show and then take 3 months off. But this year we decided to extend it a little bit more than that because there was just a lot that we wanted to talk about and a lot of people we wanted to talk to. And quite frankly, there was a lot of people who the response this year has been so good that there was a lot of people that just like, we don't want you to go away. So yeah, we're going to take December off and then we'll be back in January.
Very cool. So just a tiny little bit of time off.
Just a tiny little bit of time.
That's the way to do it.
There's, as you know, it's a massive event that can take a year to cover as far as, and we still barely scratch the surface, it feels like sometimes.
I mean, you could be easily year round. I mean, there's plenty of you could go into Retro Dragon Con, which I know you do to some extent, but I mean, that could almost be a whole other show.
Absolutely.
Also joining us, our head of research, Mr. Ryan Schweck.
Oh, glad to be on tonight. It's crazy. It's been 2 years.
Yeah.
Time has gone quickly.
Well, I had just had to focus on other things for a while. And, after 400 episodes, I felt like, well, that's if it's time to put a bow on it, then let's do it. And if not, someday the itch will come back and I'll feel the need to talk again. And there's a little bit of momentum right now. So moving ahead, we're back for the moment. And finally, one of our greatest and most prolific contributors, Beth Van Dusen. Welcome back to the show.
Thank you for having me. I was surprised and delighted to see that we're back on.
We are. Needless Things over the next year. Going to be making some moves, going to be making things happen. But before we get to all of that, we have to talk about The Penguin. Maybe a bit hyperbolic to say the greatest TV show of all time. But it was a pretty good show. It was a pretty good show. We enjoyed it. Just a little bit of history before we get deep into things. The character of the Penguin was introduced in December of 1941 in Detective Comics number 58. And we could do a whole episode talking about Penguin's insane comic book history, like the time he retired from crime after being bitten by a baby alligator. I was actually going to try and pick out some points in time to talk about from Penguin's comic book history, and there's just too much insane stuff. But since we have a couple of people here who are far more well-versed in DC history than I am, Schweck, do you have any specific Penguin moments from the comics that are kind of your favorites, or what jumps to mind when you're thinking about the character?
Oh God, I don't know. I think with the character, you got the two kind of versions of him. Your superpowers, kind of cartoony shooting umbrella guns and all that, trick umbrellas, and then you've got your more kind of kingpin-y, long Halloween Penguin that I think this show kind of leaned into.
Yeah, and I like both. That's the great thing about comic books and comic book adaptations, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that later on, about where we are with adapting things. But to me, it leaves room for all kinds of different interesting versions of all of these characters, in the same way that Batman can be anything from Adam West to Ben Affleck to, everything that he's been in the comics. One of my personal favorite versions, the Brave and the Bold Batman. They're all very adaptable in the hands of a talented writer. Mike, what about you in the comics history of Penguin? Is there anything that particularly jumps out to you?
It's interesting because, last year I started on a podcast called Bat Chums, where we were reviewing the Batman 60 series episode by episode. And when we got to our first Penguin episode, I did some research as far as read the very first Penguin stories, from the 40s and whatnot. And it is interesting to see how far that character has come. And, he's he's one of those characters that it takes a while before you really sort of get to know him, as far as he's not one that really jumps out at you with really, really great stories like the Joker or the Riddler or Catwoman. Like, if you're talking about the big four, I think Penguin's up there, but you're kind of like, why is the Penguin there? He's got no powers. He's not like a physical threat. And yet there's something really interesting about him, and his mind and his cunning, and the fact that he's not super powered, that he's still around. I've read a few stories where he's died. I remember a comic story.
Everybody has a few of those.
Back in the, I think, early 80s, where he died. So quote unquote died. I think we need to put that in quotes now, right? Whenever we're talking about
well, you know what? I don't think you do, though, because if you're talking about comic book deaths, I think the quote unquote is implied.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. But and the way he's been depicted in other media too, starting with Burgess Meredith and going from there, he's been interesting. Like, I think out of all the Batman villains, he's had, he doesn't have two Oscar-winning performances assigned to him as a villain, but yet he's been depicted in so many different ways and iconic ways, whether it's Danny DeVito or from Gotham, it was Robin Taylor, right?
Robin Lord Taylor, yeah.
Robin Lord Taylor, right? And then even this new cartoon where they gender swapped him.
Yeah.
So it's a female Penguin. I mean, it still works. I mean, as long as you have sort of the basics there, I think it still works. He still works as a character. So that I'm really kind of just ready to chomp at the bit and talk about this the way he's depicted here, because it's really different, but yet really the same.
Well, and I think that's how Penguin has survived to the modern day, because if you look back at the history of DC Comics, he is one of Batman's most prolific villains, just as far as like page count, but shifting from, bird-themed crimes to more of an organized crime boss kind of thing, that I believe really started to happen in earnest after Danny DeVito's performance, and once like Goodfellas, and we had this wave of crime flicks, and I feel like he kind of got, I don't know what writer came up with the idea, or maybe it was one of the editors, who knows, but they realized like, well, wait a minute, here's something different that we can do with Penguin, an attempt can be made. For me, I think Burgess Meredith's portrayal is going to be inescapable. I grew up with it. I love it. And that's, in a weird way, that's my definitive Penguin, but I'm open to everything. Beth, what about you? Like, as far as pop culture goes, like, is there, outside of what we're going to be talking about tonight, what's your kind of cornerstone or touchstone for a Penguin, the idea of the character?
Well, I mean, I obviously watched the original show when I was a kid. That show didn't really resonate with me quite so much, but
shocking.
Yeah. Obviously, the Danny DeVito performance in the second Batman movie would be my idea, until now, would have been my idea of the Penguin. If somebody asked me about the Penguin, I would think of Danny DeVito instantly.
And we're going to get a little more input here because guess who is here now? Welcome to the show, the fabulous Cadavers, Ryan and Nicole. How are you guys doing tonight, aside from extremely tired?
Yeah,
a
little bit of that.
That's okay.
We were out in the woods shooting an Evil Dead themed metal music video for some guys, which was pretty cool. So
That does sound pretty cool.
but we were running around the woods covered in a lot of blood, and we made it back almost in time. Not quite, but we're here.
We're little gross, but we're here.
So for you guys, what is your when you think of the character of the Penguin prior to Colin Farrell's portrayal? What came to mind for you? Like, what was your touchstone for that?
I mean, obviously, classic Burgess Meredith, like you're talking about. Like, I always picture the figure, like the original Penguin figure that I had, like, was just like iconic, and like that's like the Penguin to me.
The superpowers, the
yeah.
blue, and yeah,
exactly. Love that one. Honestly, the Danny DeVito one scared me really bad when I was a kid, like, and kind of still now.
Everybody remember Ryan was 5 when that movie came out.
Really freaked me out big time. The flipper hands and the biting the guy's nose off was scary, scary stuff.
But I mean, it got him into trouble. McDonald's was angry.
Yeah. But I mean, I think when I started to actually like the Penguin was in the Arkham games, when he was like kind of a Guy Ritchie mob boss kind of character.
Yeah.
And that's really like what like made me be like, oh, okay, the Penguin can actually be like threatening, and he's not like a punchline or like a weird mutant. Like, he's, actually can be like a competent crime boss and have like, plans and actually take charge. And then the Batman, obviously, I loved Colin Farrell's performance and wanted to see more of him. So I was thrilled about this show.
Well, and having watched the show, I think we can probably all agree that you're not the only one who was influenced by the Arkham games.
Yeah.
Yes.
I don't want to reiterate what everybody else has said, but obviously Danny DeVito. I mean, his performance in that movie was like just this insane, horrific, comedic thing. I mean, it's fantastic. But what we haven't talked about yet is the Penguin from the old Scooby-Doo cartoons.
Oh yeah.
When whichever one that was where they teamed up with everybody.
Yeah,
the one who was wearing a mask over his top hat.
It's like there were several like Scooby-Doo meets Batman episodes, and the Penguin would be on there, and very much like top hat, long nose, monocle,
big cigarette.
Yeah, the long, like, very glamorous cigarette thing. It was the 70s or 80s, so you could do that then. You could smoke. But yeah, I always I love those, and I watched them a million times. So I do still sometimes tend to think of that when I think about Penguin.
Well, you know what? Another one that we kind of hadn't talked about that really does bridge the gap between bird-themed crime and gangster is the Batman the Animated Series version.
Yes,
I think that's where the Iceberg Lounge was introduced.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that's right. Wait. Okay, now, well, it doesn't matter. Regardless, that era, around that time for sure. But it toned down the grotesque appearance that we saw in Batman Returns, and put him in situations where he was kind of the criminal mastermind, mob boss kind of guy, and not running for mayor from the sewers.
Yeah. I mean, I really feel like Tim Burton just heard about the Penguin and was like, yeah, like, he must be part Penguin. And completely, like, went off the fucking rails.
It's when he puts the little, like, political button on the girl's chest. That's the worst part. Like, I still don't like it. It makes me uncomfortable every time.
Even prior to having a better sense of just gender politics, I guess, because you saw harassment like that all the time in the movies in the 80s. It was just a thing, and maybe again, but at the time, Penguins, like, that was so far beyond creepy, like that.
Well, and what ties into this, John Turturro, if I say it right, he's not on this show because he said he was concerned about the violence against women. And that's why it's another actor.
I didn't know. Well, it's Mark Strong, which is wild because to go from Sinestro to Carmine Falcone is quite a move. And all credit due to Mark Strong for being fantastic. When I didn't know that was why John Turturro was not in the show. When I heard he wasn't going to be in it, I was like, well, they just can't have Carmine Falcone then, and I don't know what they're going to do with certain things. But Mark Strong, phenomenal.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
It didn't leave me wanting anything else. Like I was perfectly happy with him. I thought he did a great job.
Yeah, absolutely.
It is weird that he was in The Big Lebowski playing a sex offender and other things, but I guess people change over time. But yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean that's absolutely. And again, The Big Lebowski came out in what, 96?
Yeah.
Didn't
he strangle
even then
Catwoman in the Batman?
Huh?
Didn't he like strangle Catwoman in the Batman?
He does.
Yeah,
a little,
but he gets in a fist fight with her.
That's his daughter, though. That's different.
Yeah,
that's more domestic violence,
right?
Versus,
that's fine.
Yeah, that's a whole other thing.
So to women that you are related to or dating, but you cannot be just random women.
That's just not okay.
Realistic,
So to date, there have been 5 major live-action Penguins. Of course, we've talked about Burgess Meredith, Danny DeVito, Robin Lord Taylor from Gotham, who I think right now is still my favorite.
He was awesome.
Because Gotham is just so epic and nuts, and he owned that role very quickly.
Absolutely.
It was very much a like Heath Ledger situation. When I first saw the actor playing the character, I was like, I don't know about this.
Right.
Like, this doesn't make any sense. And then when you watch it, you're like, perfect. This works in every way. Yeah.
Well, he like I said, he took ownership of it.
Yeah.
And of course, now we have Colin Farrell. But we must not forget the little-known Penguin from the Angie Tribeca episode, Germs of Endearment.
What?
Which is a Warner Brothers production. Therefore, I am going to consider this a canon appearance of the Penguin in live action. Now, if you're not familiar with the Angie Tribeca episode, Germs of Endearment, the storyline is that there is a virus originating from penguins that's liquefying the citizens of Los Angeles. And the only way to stop this virus is to take the blood of every penguin in the city. So the police go around and round up all the penguins, including
the penguin.
This one.
That's the most comic accurate penguin I've seen on screen.
Yeah.
And if for anybody watching or listening, if you have not watched Angie Tribeca, since the Zucker brothers kind of stopped doing what they did, there have been so many imitators that just don't get it. This, to me, is the closest to like Airplane, Naked Gun. The show is incredible. The humor, if you want that kind of just ridiculous humor, Angie Tribeca gets it done. So check it out.
Just a quick question.
Yes.
How long does it take to go around and get all the blood from the penguin? I figure you hit the zoo and the aquarium and you're good.
You'd be shocked. There was one lady who was picking up, she was out walking her penguin and was picking up the poop, and the SWAT team ran by and grabbed it and ran off. This shows like, it's when I say it's like Naked Gun, it totally is. So there were penguins all over this city. It was out of control. So yeah, if you want to check that show out, start with Germs of Endearment. You really don't need to know backstory or anything. It's fine. All right. So The Penguin, it was created and showrun by Lauren LaFranc. The music was by Michael Jack, who also did the music for The Batman. Your writers were Lauren LaFranc, Erica L. Johnson, Noel Valdivia, John McClutchan, Brenna Gibson and Shay Ogbonna, Nick Town, and Vladimir Svetko. And directors, who mostly did 2 episodes apiece, were Craig Zobel, Helen Shaver, Kevin Bray, and Jennifer Getzinger. And I've got to give Lauren LaFranc credit as the showrunner, because this felt so consistent. If you had told me one person had written and directed the whole thing, I would have believed it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because episode to episode, the style, the tone, everything about it all lined up. There was not one that sort of stood out as like, oh, this must be somebody else. It was very well executed. And before we get any further, I want to remind everybody, the main character, Oz Cobb, as he is called in this show. And then, of course, you also have the man who played him that looks like this.
Still weird. Still don't believe it. I
Can't
still
wrap
don't.
my mind around it ever.
Yeah.
It is mind-blowing, and I can only assume that ugly actors everywhere are furious.
Yeah.
But that being said, I mean, he's so good in the role, I wouldn't want anybody else to do it.
I have never seen a better Tony Soprano impersonation in my life.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm not saying that as a bad thing. We want to go ahead and get those comparisons out of the way. Have you guys all watched The Sopranos, right?
Yeah.
I've never watched The Sopranos.
I have not watched
What is happening?
Wow.
I don't know. I've never watched it.
Oh my gosh. Please watch The Sopranos. It really it lives
I feel
up
like
to the
I
hype.
need to now.
That's fair. That's fair. Legit, it does live up to the hype. Like I kind of put it off for a little while. Well, a little while. I didn't start watching it until the second season because it was one of those things that felt to me like an overnight success, and I'm so resistant to that kind of stuff. It's incredible. But anyway, there's so many parallels.
Because I like watched it like when it was airing, and I don't think I finished it, but I need to like rewatch it. Yeah,
definitely. I mean, it earns it. And the great thing is, like, it was so frustrating. So this is another thing I want to talk about. Watching The Sopranos, it was so frustrating waiting week to week and then like a year between seasons or whatever it was. And now you can watch 3-4 episodes at a time, however you want to watch it. You can binge as much of it as you want to, and it's a much more satisfying watch now to me. But I wouldn't have wanted to watch it that way the first time around because you don't get to digest anything. And that's the Penguin. I appreciated the fact that they released them one a week. You had to wait. You had to think about the hour that you just watched, live with it, digest it, and have it with you going into the next episode, as opposed to just bang, 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 going through all 8 episodes in a day. I think that's a great way to watch something a second time. But where are you guys on that? Like, do you prefer the big drop the whole series at once, or do you like spreading them out?
With you, like, and I think like the person in me that wants that immediate gratification, like I want the next episode right away, but I do feel that it is a better watching experience to watch it episodically.
100%.
Because I feel like when I binge something, if I watch like a whole season of a show, like in one weekend or whatever, I start to lose a lot of the details of it. I start to kind of like it kind of melds together. And I don't think I'm processing it as good as I could. So as much as I want it to be all there immediately, I think that, I actually end up enjoying it a lot better episodically.
And it's like week to week, I'm talking to friends and coworkers about the Penguin and like kind of coming up with like, oh, what if this happens? Or what if this person does this?
And then looking forward to it too, which we've kind of gotten away from with streaming.
But like, Cobra Kai, for instance, that drops and I'll watch like all like 6 episodes in a day. And like the next season comes out and I'm like, what was happening? Because I didn't have any time to digest it.
Yeah, it didn't sit and simmer in your brain for any amount of time because you were just banging through them.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I forget stuff too. When I binge it, it's over, and then I just go, yep, all right. And then I kind of don't think of it again. Versus, this where you digest for a week. And I'm definitely a person that likes to come up with theories in my head. And sometimes it ends up with you being a little disappointed because you think you've come up with a better theory.
Right.
But this one, I didn't feel that way.
That's the whole poison of like nerddom is we all speculate and come up with our own ideas of what things should be, and then sometimes it's hard to accept things for what they are when they're not what you wanted, even if what they are may be better than what you wanted, but it's not what you wanted. That's one of the biggest problems of being a fan of any genre right now. I've seen it everywhere from Star Wars to Doctor Who. I left a Doctor Who podcast because of that kind of thing.
What? Why would you do that?
So we got to talk about the show, obviously, at some point. First of all, I want to recommend everybody watch this again because I rewatched the whole entire thing in a day, and seeing the early episodes. Well, first of all, getting that refresher. We were talking before we went on the air. I was talking about having completely forgotten what Penguin's foot looked like. Just this mass of pink flesh with toenails stuck to it. But also seeing Oz and Sophia interact, knowing how the story turns out, which, by the way, spoilers, we're going to be talking about everything that happened in this show. So if you haven't watched it yet and you don't want spoilers, get out of here.
Then come back.
But knowing how things end up and discovering the way the show played out, the history between Oz and Sophia, watching their interactions in those first couple of episodes, the acting is twice as good because you can see all of it. Mm-hmm. You can see the whole story in the way they act towards each other. And it's fascinating to watch a second time through. So the show opens up. We pick up with music directly from the Batman and news reports about what Riddler did at the end of the Batman, which, if you don't remember, was flooding great portions of Gotham City, including an area called Crown Point. And the whole premise was that Gotham's poorest neighborhoods are the ones that were the most affected. And all of that happening is what has left this vacuum for Penguin to make the moves that he does over the course of this show. And the opening is great because one of the first things that Oz does opens up the trunk of his spectacular purple car, by the way.
Plum, right?
Plum. That's right. Plum. And pulls out a sledgehammer and an umbrella. And I feel like that was just to get the umbrella in right at the start. Going into this show, and at this point, having experienced it, I don't know if you may even recall your expectations, but do you guys remember anything specific that you sort of thought might come of this show, or any plots that you thought might be part of it? I didn't look at anything beforehand. I don't look at spoilers. I don't look at like leaks or reveals or anything. I like to go into stuff fresh. Was there anything you wanted out of this show going in?
I think going in, I was somewhat surprised at the end of the Batman. They kind of seemed to set up that Oz is already in control. Like, they had that final shot of him kind of looking over the city, and there's a voiceover about, new players in power. And so I was definitely surprised when the show started and we're right back to, not really. He's still, the driver. He's still there. So I'm glad they went back and did that. So you got to see that rise.
Well, and I think that was somewhat intentional because it's a classic, literary is not the right word, storytelling thing to show your main character seemingly achieving their arc at the end of one installment, but then it's not as easy as they thought it was going to be, or it's not wrapped up that neatly, or whatever the case may be. I can't think of specific examples now, but I know we've seen that kind of thing before, where one closes and you're like, cool, everything's good, and then the next opens up and you're like, oh no, they've got a lot of work to do, actually.
Well, and it went really good with the character, because this version of the Penguin constantly thinks he has more power and he's got it all together. And so it makes sense at the end of the movie. He thinks he's the new kingpin of Gotham, and no, you're really not.
Yeah.
Well, and really he could think that because he knew what he was going after at the beginning of the show. Like, he already had that knowledge in place that he was going after that. So his thinking was, I got this, it's done. And then he runs into Alberto, and this is where the series of rugs being pulled out from under Oz begins.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and also Oz very much thinks that he deserves this and should be the kingpin of Gotham, like, regardless of whether or not he actually does and whether or not he actually, should go from being a driver to, you know, the top of Gotham crime. But he, from the very beginning, is like, well, yeah, like, I deserve all this.
Yeah.
Of course. Why isn't it just mine now? And then he has to go after it. And then, you know, I guess shenanigans ensue from there.
I didn't really have any expectations. I adored the Batman. Like, I love it. I've watched it like 6 times. Like, I love that movie. And I just wanted to see more of that world. So I was very hyped about it, and more of that version of Gotham. And then the only thing is I was expecting a cameo from Batman, or at least more mention of him, like criminals being in the shadows, you know. But I'm perfectly fine with him not doing that, because I mean, it's a big city. There's a lot going on. You know, he also got like shot at the end and was like all messed up. So it's like, and this happens like right after that movie. So I'm perfectly fine with the way they did it. But my expectation was that Pattinson was going to show up at some point as Bruce Wayne or something like that, and there would be more references to Batman. But once again, totally fine with that not being the case.
Have you guys seen Matt Reeves' answer to that? He basically said, well, Batman's really busy.
Yeah.
Which, you know what? I can buy that.
Fair.
Yeah, I buy it. And also, Matt Reeves looks like Commissioner Gordon now. So, like, I trust everything he says.
Well, and I think, and I hate to say realistically, because I get really annoyed when people try to ground superhero stories too much.
Yeah.
But in this instance, at the end of the Batman, not only is Batman kind of jacked up, but also he has had this realization that he really does want to contribute to Gotham in a much more significant way than just punching crime in the face. So, one, it remains to be seen. We may have some follow-up on what he's been doing in the Batman 2. 2, maybe he's been acting as Bruce Wayne to really do some good in Gotham, with a little, you know, Batman on the side. And also, you got to think, everything that happens in this show that might have required Batman's attention, it's really just Sophia blowing up Crown Point. There are a few other things that are significant, but most of this is going on like kind of low key, and there's probably a lot more louder in your face crime happening than the stuff that's happening in this show.
Yeah.
That's what I was thinking too.
That's kind of what I thought, the bat signal at the end. Like, you got to the very end, there's a hole in Crown Point now. Like, the police are like, all right, this has gone far enough. Hit the signal.
And this, apparently, this all takes place in a week.
Yeah.
So, which
That's a hell of a week.
It seems a little compressed. I don't know that I buy that.
Maybe a month. Maybe a month.
I heard it was a week after the Batman, but I didn't hear that the whole thing took place in a week.
Well, and that sounds much more reasonable, because there's no way they grew all those mushrooms and set up that base underground. Yeah, this is.
It felt like Crown Point. They had like a time jump to me. It felt like there was a little bit of.
No, you're right. It definitely did. But this, I mean, this could have been over the course of a year. Now that I'm thinking about it, because just to get back underground and get the setup that they had going.
Yeah.
By the end of the show, there's no way.
So I think maybe some people got some wires crossed. I think what they were trying to say was this is a week after the Batman.
Right.
It picks up from there.
Yeah. Which does mean Batman was busy for like a year. But that, again, that's okay. It's fine.
I think, yeah, but I also think, to your point, I don't think there's anything that really would pop up on his radar until the explosion at the end. And since that's the last episode, I'm kind of like, okay, well, that's where Batman goes, okay, I need to look into this. And then, you know, I fully expected, really, when we see that last shot of Penguin looking out his window, I really thought that we were going to pan across the street and there would be actually Batman on some sort of gargoyle or something.
Yeah.
Like watching him, kind of the way that the Cape Crusaders series ended, where, I mean, maybe without the, you know, dramatic lighting, but I thought that, you know, he's like, now you've got my attention.
Yeah.
Like now, because I think the whole point of this, and the only thing I was really hoping for in this series, was that we would see the journey from Oscob to the Penguin.
Right.
And I don't think he's fully embraced. We don't really get it where he's fully embraced the name the Penguin at the end, but he is dressed up in the tux. He is living large. He is, for all intents and purposes, the king of things right now.
He is forcing his prostitute girlfriend to dress up like his mother, which is so
bad.
I think that was the most impactful moment of the entire series for me, because he's real creepy with his mom the whole time. Obviously, it's one of the cornerstones of the show.
Sure.
But then that reveal, once you realize her hair and what she's wearing, and then he goes over and like calls her mom, and you're like, ugh.
And my guess is that that's not the first time they've role played like that.
No, we just didn't see it before.
We didn't see it until now, right?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. All right. Well, we've jumped ahead quite a bit. So for this opening episode, where we get the big event of Oz murdering Alberto Falcone, Beth, with this first episode, like, were you hooked from the beginning?
Yes, I didn't want a bunch of goofy superhero stuff. I wanted, the crime families and
whoa, slow your roll now.
But the Batman wasn't a goofy superhero movie.
Right.
It was gritty, and it was way too long, but it was gritty, and it wasn't, deformed mutant evil villains and that kind of silly stuff. There was no bat suits with nipples. It wasn't goofy. I wanted stuff that was more like the animated shows that I used to love, which were more gritty, more realistic. And I thought that the most interesting parts of the Batman to me was the crime families, was the syndicates and all of that stuff. So that's what I wanted. I didn't want Batman to show up. But so I was absolutely hooked from the beginning, because it delivered exactly what I was hoping for from the get-go.
Well, and it delivered it in an environment that felt, especially if you've played the Arkham games, this is a shot from the first episode that looks like a screen grab from Arkham City.
Totally.
I think there's no doubt that Matt Reeves has taken a lot of inspiration from those games.
Yes.
And I really appreciate, Beth, like you said, it does have a grit to it, and there is a certain groundedness to it, but it has a heightened reality that feels true to a comic book adaptation.
Well, that's the thing. Like, I don't like the Nolan movies because they feel like, what if Batman existed in like Chicago or whatever? But like,
Right.
It still feels like a fantastical world, even though it is like more realistic and is more gritty. Like, the way Gotham City looks and the way like you don't even know exactly what time period it's set in, like, is what I love about this Gotham City.
Yeah, I love
That's what I love about Gotham.
Exists outside of home. It's like own thing.
Well, and Arkham is pretty nuts.
Yeah.
When we see inside of Arkham, it does feel like a comic book asylum, like immediately getting the collar on, like with the chains and everything, and everybody wears them all the time. And then the whole idea of Bliss, that are these weird mushrooms they grow under Arkham and feed to the inmates, like, that's comic book stuff, but it's done in such a way that it works into this world. And I really like, it reminds me a lot of what, Ian McShane said about Game of Thrones, is like you draw the people in with the intrigue, and then you throw dragons at them once they're sucked in.
Yeah.
Or no, I believe he just said tits and dragons.
That's what we called the show. We called It's Time for Tits and Dragons.
But I like the idea of having this established world that's a little fantastical, but pretty based. And then as we go on, maybe we start to find weirder and weirder things. Like, we don't need to go full Gotham from the start. But we do get a hint. Well, I'll save this one because we've got to get through some of the characters first. So we've talked about Oz. Alberto Falcone, basically the second he walks into screen, the only better indication we could have had that he's a douchebag is if he'd not been wearing socks. just you want him dead as soon as he starts talking.
Yeah.
But I did not. Did anybody see that coming?
No. I started cracking up when it happened. When
It's amazing.
Well, I was like, perfect. That's great.
And you want
the realization of like, oh shit.
And the setup of it was so good because at that point, because the root to me, this show was about two people. It was about one villain who was born evil, traditional Michael Myers style, and one villain who was turned evil and is maybe still struggling with it to a degree. Because you have Oz Cobb on one side and you've got Sofia Falcone Gigante on the other side. And my gosh, I was so worried through the whole show that she was going to end up dead.
Yeah.
Because the show's called Penguin. The show's not called Gigante.
Yeah.
And that was actually later on in the season when things were really coming to a head between them. That was the point where I thought Batman was going to show up, because my feeling was the only way one of them doesn't end up dead is if Batman intervenes. If one of them's getting ready to kill the other one, because it has to get to that. And then that's when Batman shows up, and that's the only reason one of them doesn't end up dead. But the real reason is that Oz, as he does, has planned and screwed over another person.
Something worse than that.
Screwed over
his plans
screwed
have
over
plans.
Sophia again. I mean,
You're right.
Can I give you my prediction of when I thought Batman was going to show up?
Yeah.
This was okay. I didn't really think this, but I was kind of like, this would be the most hilarious thing ever. So when Vic shoots Squid, his bully, and he kills him, I was like, what if Batman shows up? I said this right when it happened, just right now, and just beats the ever loving shit. This kid that we love. Like, he hasn't been there the whole time. And then, like, he shoots his bully, and then, like, Batman shows up. He's like, you can't kill people.
That would have been amazing. I would have loved that. And then he just, like, takes Vic, he could either leave him in the street, Arkham game style, like Vic with his, like, hand, his leg up on a wall and his hand over his head, or take him off to prison or whatever. And then that's it. We never see Batman in the show again. That would have been amazing, because it really... Because this show plays with your feelings about these characters, which is one of the best things, because every single episode, there's this rise and fall of Oz's sense of humanity, where you do have some empathy for the character. You're like, he is struggling. He is a working class hero. And then every single episode, he does some despicable, inhuman thing. And you're like, no, he's just evil.
Yeah.
And I loved that roller coaster ride with his character.
So going through it for me, like, I frequently while watching the show kind of forgot or let myself forget that it does have to tie into this world at the end. So I kind of just let my mind forget about that and started kind of imagining all these other things. So in the beginning, I'm kind of like, okay, so he's a little bit of a sympathetic, almost an anti-hero character in the first couple episodes, where you start meeting Vic and he's kind of like, ruining his life, but also helping him. His life's already been ruined by... Well,
right. That was the thing, is Vic started as this, like, almost blank slate. Like, he didn't have any down to go.
He's just lost everything.
Yeah.
Everybody he's loved, everything he's ever known, and he's completely lost. And like, he definitely deserves better than ending up with the Penguin, but the Penguin takes him under his wing.
Nice.
And so you're watching this, and there's some moments where you're like, okay, well, Penguin is a piece of shit, but he's always been in this world, right? So he's selling drugs and he's like in this whole criminal world, but he cares about this kid.
Right.
And he's trying to kind of father figure him in the only way that he would know how. And then, and again, spoilers, we get to the point where he sets Maroni's family on fire. And at that point, I was like, oh, yeah, he's a real bad guy, like a real fucking bad guy. Because, like, up to that point, it was like I forgot that we had to come back around to this place to be back with, like, the Batman, you know? And I was like, oh, like, where is this going, you know? And then, yeah, he fucking just, when he burns Maroni's wife and son alive, I was like, okay, holy shit, like.
And he didn't have to.
No,
there's so many other things that he could have done.
Right.
But he did that because he is evil. And then you start realizing, like, oh, okay, excuse me, he's been evil the whole time. I've been making excuses for him because he has this connection with Vic because he wants to be to Vic what he thought this other guy was.
Rex Calabrese.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. And it's all this self-serving. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
He just has this like self-serving idea of what he wants to believe himself to be, which is not at all what he is. And and
it's funny because Alberto knew it because that's what he laughed at him about.
Mhm.
You want to be that guy?
Yeah. And he was 100% right.
Yeah.
What they did so good with him, with the Penguin, was too that he really believes his crap. Like, he is so earnest. Like that speech where he's like, yeah, gangs, we're going to come together and we're going to topple the rich people. Like, he really does believe that. Like, and it's not like there's so many times I think in the show where other stories would have made it seem like he was tricking them or this was just a means to the end. There's so many scenes where he is fully buying into his crap and his worldview changes. That's what's so crazy is something will happen and he's like, no, this is what it always is. I'm the good guy.
Yeah, I mean, you keep mentioning the word evil, and he's evil. I think for me, I would replace that word with psychotic. I mean, he's just he's a psychopath. And
all right,
yes,
Dr. Gordon.
He might believe something 1 minute.
Yeah,
you know, but he has no problem like killing and getting rid of when we find out like his origin that he got rid of his brothers and he doesn't feel bad about that. Like we're just like, I mean, that's just and so there's nobody.
He convinced himself that he like wasn't responsible for it.
Yeah.
So I would say as someone, for a living that works with children with severe mental health and behavioral issues, like I've seen that kid before. I've worked with that kid before. And yeah, in his head, like that's not an evil thing. Like that's just, what he did to kind of protect himself and his brain. Like
anything that is done in service of getting what he wants, he does not perceive as evil.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Because he is it.
I wasn't surprised with Vic's fate at the end.
No.
I wasn't surprised. I think if the series was going to be, like 2 or 3 seasons, maybe this was too early for Vic to go. But being a short season, a limited series like it is, he had to go because the Penguin can't be the Penguin with, a sidekick.
Well, and also the arc. Oh, go ahead, Beth.
Oh no, I was just gonna say the look on his face when he realizes he's like, oh shit, or I believe he just says fuck, and it's a realization of I'm gonna have to do this. Now's the time.
Yeah.
And that's the arc of the whole season was this escalation of reprehensible acts, of him becoming truly irredeemable in the viewer's eyes. Like I think by the time we find out that he murdered his brothers. Well, it's this double whammy because we find out he murdered his brothers, but then he's gonna let Sophia's goon cut his mom's pinky off before he'll admit.
And he still never, ever, never takes responsibility for it. He really doesn't.
No, absolutely not. So we talk about how Penguin is not a supervillain, but the closest he comes, his superpowers are that he can think on his feet and tell people what they want to hear.
Yeah.
And the reason that he can tell people what they want to hear is he has this weird talent for engaging with people.
Mm-hmm.
And he does get to know people. He knows what they want. He knows how to talk to them. So it's this really weird psychology he has where you think of a narcissist or a psychopath in that they're so self-centered that it's typically a weakness, but he is able to maneuver around that and actually engage with people on a level, but only because it serves his own ends.
Yes. Yeah,
Right.
that's the key.
Yeah.
So Schweck, I'm going to guess that you noticed the same parallel that I did with Oz and Vic's relationship to one that we've seen in the comics.
Oh, which one? Jason Todd?
Yes.
I mean, I think it was real purposeful.
Oh,
like, I mean,
100%.
They had him stealing the tires. For halfway for a minute, I kind of thought, like, what if this is an extended Jason Todd origin?
Yeah,
maybe that's when Batman shows up at the end and is like, oh, sorry, man.
You followed the wrong guy, but let me show you the way. Well, and later when
it's like an opposite Jason Todd too, which is what I love. Like, it's not the
Vic's a good kid,
right?
Who's being shown the wrong way, as opposed to Jason Todd, who was a bad kid, who Bruce was doing everything he could to give him a better life. When Sophia showed up in Crown Point with the crowbar. I was like, oh my gosh, he's about to get jokered.
I think I yelled out loud. I was like, run, Jim, run, Vic.
One of the criticisms I saw about this show was that there was not enough Easter eggs. And I was like, I love the fact that there were, they shrewdly put in references throughout the whole series. If you were savvy enough to find them, that was good, but there was never anything that was really until the end in, the last episode where they kind of, they drop Selina's name, they have the bat signal and all that. That's pretty obvious stuff. But prior to that, I think every episode contains something that if you're really knowledgeable, you'll get. And I really appreciated the fact that there wasn't really anything that was just like, oh, there's a reference to that character, we didn't need that all the time.
It didn't feel like The Mandalorian, which I love The Mandalorian.
But no, I mean, there's a time and place for fan service, but I think in this one it was so well done. It was so subtle. Like even that picture that you showed of of him with the umbrella at the beginning, it's like it's so subtle. You might miss it if you blink, and I like that.
So have you guys seen this one?
Yeah, I don't know how I feel about this one.
As in its accuracy, or as in them putting it in there?
I don't think that's who he's going to be. I mean, I see it.
Well, it doesn't necessarily mean it's who he's going to be, but it certainly could be. Yeah, right? You recognize that glove, right?
Yeah.
So this
could be Freddy Krueger. No, I'm just kidding.
So these very clearly look like, if you've played the Arkham games, again, to go back to that, if you're watching on the Needless Things YouTube channel, you can see Scarecrow from the Arkham games. And in Julian Rush's office, we seem to have that hypodermic glove and mask that certainly looks very Scarecrow-y.
Whoa, that's mind-blowing. I did not see this at all.
I didn't either. If it wasn't for the internet, I don't notice stuff like this at all. So what is
here's my hope with that. Like, I'm thinking Rush, he's working with tons of people in Arkham.
Sure.
And I'm kind of hoping Crane is in there somewhere, because Rush, to me, I mean, he's a reference, and Mike will probably know the name better. There's a Batman comic in the 40s that has a psychologist like this that's brainwashing criminals. It's a real early Batman comic, and his last name is Rush, I think. But I saw him more as like Hugo Strange. Like that's where I thought they were going.
I don't think Rush is Scarecrow. I think that's just a reference to Scarecrow, and I think you're right. He definitely has more of a Hugo Strange feel to him.
And the Blitz felt very Scarecrow, like early Scarecrow. Like toxin, fear toxin. That really felt like a thing.
That was the first thing that I thought when Magpie's eating it. I was like, oh, this is some like Jonathan Crane stuff here. This is interesting. Which another Easter egg, the fact that Magpie is in this. Now, granted, she got Snydered, but I thought it would be a fun little cameo.
I 100% thought Julian Rush was in Sophia's head for like several episodes.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because he doesn't really interact with anybody like until the end. Like, so he'll just walk in there and be like, "Oh, I was talking to the guys and they said this," but like he doesn't interact with anybody. I'm like, "Oh, this is like a Fight Club, The Boys situation, like where he's just completely in her head." And I like was 100% convinced up until the last episode.
So let's go around because we've got a lot more characters to talk about.
Can we do one more Easter egg?
Yeah,
my favorite one. Do you have that picture I sent you? Did you download it?
Oh yeah, I got it.
This is my favorite Easter egg in the whole show. Like I paused it and rewound it. That is a good Easter egg. So we know the rumor is that the second movie is Court of Owls, and putting the little owl shapes all behind the city council, I thought was a really good setup.
Yeah.
We were just talking about this earlier today.
Yeah. I didn't know about this, but I was just talking about how I do hope they do the Court of Owls in the next movie because I feel like there's a lot of things that could tie into Penguin.
I could see that.
I'd be in. That'd be fantastic.
That feels purposeful.
Yeah, it definitely does. Yeah, curtains or drapes or whatever don't just hang that way.
No, they don't. Well, in Gotham.
So any more, before we move on to some of the other characters, any more thoughts about Oz? I like that he's big. Because one of the issues that we run into all the time with Batman villains is once it comes down to a physical confrontation, there's not much there. And Oz seems like a guy that potentially could at least put up a little bit of a fight, although he didn't do so well against Clancy Brown.
No, but
an old Clancy Brown.
Yeah. Also, Clancy Brown's like 8 feet tall.
I love that they showed us an origin of why he likes to wear tuxedos and umbrellas. I thought that was a really clever scene.
Yeah. Yeah, and I like the fact that he listens to Dolly Parton.
Everybody listens to Dolly Parton.
All right, so Alberto Falcone not around very long, but he's just an entitled asshole of a guy who gets what's coming to him. Victor, I think we've covered Victor fairly well. He's a good kid who ended up in a horrible situation that just got horribler.
Yep.
Played
That's
by
a question I'm curious about. The end with his ID floating in the river. What is it? It seemed like that was a very purposeful significance that I think I missed.
I just felt like it was him erasing him, not caring about him, showing he's disposable. After all they went through together.
He took the kid's money out of his wallet.
Yeah.
That blew my mind.
Takes the money, he throws.
You know what though?
You didn't exist.
I loved that though, because how many shows do you see where a murder like that happens and they just leave the valuables? They're like, why are you being be practical? Take the money, take the watch,
$20 is
take
$20.
the shoes.
I thought he was throwing the ID away to make it harder for him to be recognized, because at this point people have seen Vic running around with the Penguin. He's going to lay there and his corpse is going to get bloated up. He's not going to have ID on him. It's going to take them a while to figure out whose body that is.
Well, and also the going under the water. I mean, that's what happened to his family.
Oh yeah, good point.
Yeah. A little bit longer.
It was tragic. I didn't see. I wasn't shocked, but I didn't see it coming like that, like the way it happened.
I didn't see it coming,
was so
but
personal.
once it happened, I was like, well, that's the only thing that could have happened.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But it gutted me.
It was rough. It was really rough. So the actor, Renzi Feliz, I would have bet money he was Forrest Whitaker's kid. Because my gosh, I mean, just the way he moves his face, well, the look of his face, the way he moves his face, everything about like his acting style, just I couldn't believe when I found out it had no relation whatsoever. But he was fantastic throughout the whole show. He was our, he was our viewpoint character. He was the one we really could sympathize with throughout the whole thing.
I wish he had gotten on that bus. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, right. Oh, that episode was brutal to watch a second time.
Yeah, because you're like, he could have gotten away.
Yeah,
Yeah.
could have been over.
Penguin said he was going to let him go. I don't know if he would have, but
I mean, it seemed like.
Yeah,
I don't think he would have.
Really?
I mean, at some point, but it seemed like he was going to be able to get on that bus if he wanted, because Penguin wasn't even paying him any mind at the time when everything went down.
Yeah.
Well, you know what? He would have gotten away because Penguin would be dead.
That's true. That's true.
Because Vic saved his life.
Yeah,
That's true.
100%.
Yeah, you're right.
So
Yeah.
he absolutely would have gotten away. Oh, Vic. So we mentioned very briefly Eve Carlo, which, by the way, that last name is something, isn't it?
It was very purposeful, I think, especially with her acting, how she kind of turns it on and off.
What if it turns out she is Basil Carlo?
That would be amazing.
She already is Clayface. Played by Carmen Ejogo. She was great. She didn't have a ton to do, but the one scene that she had with Sophia was awesome.
That was great. That was great.
So she got to do some work. Councilman Sebastian Haiti, played by Reese Quiro, and we see him early in the show, or we see Penguin putting together blackmail material on him.
Yeah.
He's got this squeaky clean image, but it turns out he's deep in debt from gambling. And then later in the show, when Penguin has taken up residence in Crown Point, he has to blackmail the councilman to get the power turned on. And that scene with the pliers, I had a physical reaction to that.
Yeah.
That's my favorite scene of the whole show.
Oh, that was brutal.
Well, that was brutal, but my favorite part of the entire show was he goes from like holding the pliers to his nose to helping him back out of the spot, and it's just so.
Come on, you got room.
More room than you think.
Yeah.
Dying laughing.
Oh, yeah.
I thought that was the funniest thing ever.
Tears.
And that was another thing about the show. As dark as it is, there were a lot of like genuine laugh out loud moments
Yeah.
in the show that made it more human and more relatable. Like, because people make jokes like that, not jokey jokes, but say funny things or act in funny ways, and all the humor came from characters.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Johnny Vitti, played by Michael Kelly, who you might recognize as the dickhead security guard from Dawn of the Dead.
I instantly recognized him. I was like, oh shit, it's CJ.
Right.
That's who it is. I spent the whole show being like, I know that guy.
And he's done a ton of stuff since then.
Tons of
But
stuff.
that was the first role where like he stood out and I was like, I can't stand this guy.
That's funny.
20 years ago that movie came out. Really had some good moments with him. He really overestimates his invulnerability.
Yes.
And his comeuppance is whew,
Yep.
when she dumps the cold water on him in the basement.
Yeah.
Because we've all been too cold and then had something happen that makes us colder. So imagining when she's describing, well, you're going to sit here in this cold water and this is what's going to happen to you.
I'm getting chills just now thinking about it.
Yeah. Horrible.
Yeah. Not his first foray, by the way, in the DCU. He played Steve Lombard in Man of Steel.
Oh, nice.
So,
Well, and I'm sure as we move into the Gunn era of DC, we're probably going to see a lot more like this because lots of good actors have been in the prior DC movies, and I don't think James Gunn or any of the creators are going to say no to somebody just because they've had a role before.
Right. Well, and yeah, I mean, it's kind of hard to find people who haven't been in something DC related over the last,
it's like
15 years.
Somebody's been in one or the other. Yeah. And so Chris Evans, obviously, has played multiple characters and
multiple Marvel characters to great success. Okay, so I've got these notes written down in the order in which they appeared in the show, and that brings us to Sophia next up. So let's go around. We'll start with Mike, who is bottom right on my screen. Thoughts about Sophia Falcone and the performance of Kristen Milioti, which, by the way, blew my mind that she was Abby Grossman on 30 Rock.
I'm not familiar with Kristen's work prior to this. And
did you watch 30 Rock?
I did not.
Oh,
so
come on, 30 Rock, The Sopranos. Mike Gordon, what are you doing with your life?
I've not watched 30 Rock either.
Spending too much time on Batman 60 shows.
That I've seen.
But yeah, apparently because I looked at her up and I was like, man, I can't believe I've not seen her before. And she's done a lot of mostly comedic work, I think.
Yeah.
And rom-coms and that kind of thing, sitcoms. And but this was the first time I'd really seen her. I'm a big fan of Long Halloween. And Matt Reeves is too, like he is definitely pulling from a lot of that world, especially when it comes to the Falcones. Now, this is a different Sophia, but I love the way the way the character was written. I love the sort of what they did with the sort of hangman moniker that was put on her. But wasn't really her. So that was, and maybe that's what Turturro was talking about as well. Because, when he signed on to do the role, he wasn't, the hangman killer.
Right.
In that. Whereas this makes that character the hangman killer.
He was like, I can choke one woman, but not 8 women.
Yeah, exactly.
It's too many women.
But in any case, her performance here is, I believe, career defining.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like I can see nothing but, as long as she's got a really good agent and doesn't say, yes to everything, like the sky's the limit for her now. Because this is, we already knew that Colin Farrell was pretty good. And he just basically does what he does, extends his consistent work that he originated in the Batman movie here, and it's solid all the way through. I'm not putting but what Kristen does here is just phenomenal, taking a character that in the way that she's written and really making her one that you don't want her to die at the end, because you want her around. Like, I want to see round 2, 3, 4, 5 of Penguin versus Falcone. Like, this is the fact that it's not over means that it can continue. So if there is, whether it's in a movie or a second season or whatever, and I know Colin doesn't want to get in the makeup again. I know he really doesn't. But put enough zeros on that check, and I'm sure he'll belly up to the bar.
Now that Oz is in control, maybe he goes and gets some plastic surgery.
And that's not. There's nothing. That's interesting too, because there's nothing in his character that we see how bad his foot is, and you're like, really, you could with the money you're making, you could probably get that attended to a little bit, right?
I think
he owns it. Like, he's like, no, this is the way I am. Exactly.
Yeah. I'm not going to let this stop me.
Because of this, people will underestimate me.
Right.
And so I'm never letting this go, because if I let this go, then people will look at me differently, and I want people to underestimate me.
Yeah.
And she's kind of got that too. I mean, she obviously it's hard not to look at her and sort of think, because of the asylum stuff and everything about Harley Quinn in some ways, especially when she's rocking that red and black outfit at the end. But she really makes this character her own. And like I said, it's career defining.
I love that her hair gets crazier as the show goes on.
Yeah, I noticed that from week to week. Like as she goes more off the rails, her haircut gets more and more jacked up.
It gets more and more Gotham.
And I think she gets more and more, like her eyeliner gets deeper and deeper, like bigger and bigger, right? Like she starts to almost wear a mask. Like
she died. Well, and her wardrobe also, because when we first meet her, she is relatively conservatively dressed in this like cream colored skirt suit thing. Her hair's all tied back and organized. And then we just see this progression of again, really kind of her turning into a bit of a supervillain.
Absolutely.
And it's just great. It's great visual shorthand, but her performance, I mean, she's electric. Every scene that she's in, she may as well be the only one in it, because I don't care about anything anybody else is doing.
Yeah, she was incredible. I mean, I really hope we get more of her, because I really thought she was going to get shot at the end, and I was very, very thrilled when, like, I was like not thrilled. I was like, this is actually worse, but it's
right.
But at least she's still in the universe.
She's still available.
Well, they've said she'll be in Batman 2.
She has to be.
Yeah, she's in it, and they said Colin Farrell's got 5 to 6 scenes in Batman 2.
There are many actors who very famously said, "I will never play that role again," and then they come back. So never say never again, I believe, is a
I don't think
proper
he said
term.
he wasn't going to do it again. I think he was just saying he didn't want to get back into makeup. I don't think he was saying he wouldn't do it again.
Yeah, well, I think for a movie, he's like, yeah, sure, but for 5 days or something, for like a series like this, where he's in 90% of it, like I think he's like, no. But I'll tell you what, Batman 2, if both of them are in it, if they're in it together, they better be careful, because they could steal the whole movie just in 5 minutes.
Yeah, I don't care if I see Batman.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
Batman and Court of Owls, who cares? Like, I just want to see more of these two.
And so she is phenomenal, but I do want to give Colin Farrell credit, because acting under all of that makeup.
Sure, absolutely.
And you never see Colin Farrell at all.
No, not remotely.
You only see James Gandolfini. Let's see. What else have we got with Sophia? Well, let's go continue around. Beth, what were some thoughts you had about Sophia Falcone?
Well, just the back and forth of her, at first at least. Is she a bad guy? Is she not a bad guy? The reveal of how she got fucked over into spending 10 years at Arkham, and then you do start to find her vaguely sympathetic, and then she gasses her entire family. So again,
honestly, I was fine with that. That
girl, that's cool.
That wasn't the turn for me that it was when Penguin lit people on fire.
Well, it's because they all sold her out.
Yeah,
because they went through when she got committed all of those signed affidavits of, we've seen her be crazy, we've seen her torture animals, we've like every single one of them were responsible for taking 10 years of her life away.
No, they absolutely all had it coming.
Yeah.
And then, good for her to save the little girl, but then when she realizes what she's done to this kid,
okay,
so breakdown was really powerful.
I have questions about that, though. So, Sophia's murdered everyone, going on about her business, and then is it Rush that comes and tells her there's like
she's asking for the cops.
What's her name? Gina?
Gia.
So he says Gia's asking for the cops. She saw something or knows something,
and he offers to take care of her.
Right. And Sophia goes to visit. But my question is, why is Sophia allowing her to be in this dump?
One thing I think we talked about, like,
she has money.
Yeah.
There's ship that kid off to Sicily.
She could do.
Right. That was really weird. I couldn't figure that out.
I thought it was more she was trying to cut ties. And yeah, she could have done it in a nicer way, but it's like that was the last tie to her family. And so by not sending her somewhere and having any involvement in her raising, that's the last tie to her family.
Oh, it was more get her away from, like, I don't even want to be taking care of her because
She
then
thinks
I'm
I'm
still
safe with you.
potentially messing her life up.
Mhm.
Right.
Put her,
That's
put
how
her
I
in the
read it.
system. Let her get like adopted by some people.
Yeah.
And like live
Normal
a normal, quote unquote,
people,
normal
yeah.
life. Yeah.
Okay, I can accept that. Although I will
Until
say
until the little girl discovers that I killed her parents, and then she's going to have revenge on me.
Oh,
Like it's going to be a
absolutely.
Kill Bill situation, right?
Well, it's a Huntress situation, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know if y'all saw the little behind the scenes thing after, but they actually said that Gotham Group Home was actually the same set as Arkham Asylum, just redressed, and they said it was intentional. Why the fuck are there
What the
balloons?
fuck?
Yay!
Hooray for asylums!
That was weird. I don't know why that happened.
I literally was like looking. I'm like, what?
If you're listening, somehow Ryan Cadaver just summoned balloons.
He was celebrating Gotham Group Homes.
I'm waiting for a murder clown to come out of the bathroom behind you.
You're the winner.
But that was really weird. But anyways, yeah, they said it was the same set, and they did it intentionally to kind of like mirror the fact that like she's doing the same thing that her family did to her.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Which
Visually
I thought
makes
was kinda
sense.
cool.
Well, that's terrible.
Mhm.
So Schweck, what? Let's talk about Sophia a little bit.
I think what I liked about her story so much is that it showed Gotham turns you into a supervillain. And justifiably so. I was like, you know what? You should kill all these people. And she has that really good speech where she kind of says, I realize I've been playing by their rules and now I'm going to do something else. Like,
Yeah,
I think overall that was kind of the background of this show too, was they were ending normal crime in Gotham. And now we're heading towards
Super villain era.
crazy. Yeah.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah.
and before we move on, Cadavers, any more to say about Sophia?
I like
She
to say a
was-
lot about Sophia.
She was absolutely
Keep it in your pants.
Yeah. Yeah, she was absolutely incredible in every way. Like she was, it was such an incredible performance, and I don't know. It was such an unconventional story, unconventional villain, and just not what I would have expected at all. There's so many things that if I had have read this before, like read a synopsis of what the show is going to be, I would have been like, this is going to be lame, and it ended up being just amazing. Like,
Well, it's all about the characters and the performances. Like the story's good, don't get me wrong,
Mhm.
but it is character stuff
like,
all the
I
way
read,
through.
like, oh, Penguin's gonna have like a sidekick kid.
Right. That
and-
sounds stupid.
Daughter of the Falcons is gonna run everything and chase everybody out of town. I'd be like, this is insane. Like none of this makes any sense.
Yeah.
See it and you're like, this is perfect. This is great. Like they nailed it.
Yeah.
So I'm glad I didn't know anything about it. Like I was glad that she was a total surprise. And even from episode 1, I was like, she's dangerous. She's gonna be a huge threat to Oz. Like
Yeah.
she like commanding presence immediately.
Well, and the way they slowly parsed out the backstory and the information, because you know there's something, but you don't know what it is, and
Yeah.
the way it played out to where we really didn't get the extent of their relationship, their background. That one episode where she's just the sweetest pie little girl hosting the charity event and just looks so. The way that they visually changed her was incredible throughout the whole show.
Yeah.
Just sweet, innocent young girl. She goes outside, and Oz is like, "Hey, you did real good in there, kid." You know, he's got this real. He's so sweet to her, and to see that relationship, and then to know what he did.
Yeah.
Again, it's just another one of those, illustrating how awful he is.
Yeah. She's like, first of all, of course, she's gorgeous, but beyond that, she's such an incredible character. And from like watching this from a female perspective, like, first of all, there was a couple episodes in where I like looked at Ryan and I'm like, so who's writing this? Because this is a woman that is writing this character, right? Like, she's just been screwed over by, her father, by, everybody around her. And like, she's just not going to take this shit from these men anymore. And that's it, and she's incredibly like smart and cunning and like yeah, she's a villain, but she's the villain I'm rooting for the whole time.
Yeah.
And like, and I feel like the difference between her and Oz is that even with all that she's been through, and like you said before, one of them is born, one of them is made, right? And so she was just a little society girl and very, very, very smart, but like whatever. And then she's made into this other thing that she is now.
A person capable of horrific things.
But she still has a shred of humanity and a shred of empathy left in her, and that's why she didn't beat Oz. Like, whatever it was, like, he won because he doesn't have any of that. All he cares about is Oz. And Mike's right, he's a psychopath. He is not a good guy at all. Everything he does is to serve himself and to make himself what he thinks he deserves to be. And she's just trying to get out at the end. She's like, I just want to get out, you know?
If the roles were reversed, when they had Oz and Francis both captured, Oz would have cut Francis's head off in front of, like, if the situation were reversed, like there wouldn't have been any playing around with psychology or cigar cutter on the pinky or any of that.
Yeah, she was taken out because she isn't 100% gone yet.
Right.
Well, even the fact that she didn't
human.
kill Eve, like that was a big thing.
Yeah,
like, I 100%
right.
was gonna kill Eve.
And well, that was that episode where when I watched that episode, I was like, because I'm not really good about like directors and Disney, and I was like, okay, there's definitely a woman either writing this, directing this, running this, whatever, because that exchange between the two of them was something that I don't know that like a man would have written and had it come off that genuine.
No, there was a strong female presence in the creators of this show, directors, writers, and of course the showrunner.
And that's when I started paying attention to like who was running, who was the showrunner and this and that. And I was like, okay, this absolutely makes perfect sense. But that episode was so good.
So to talk a little bit, we've mentioned Oz's relationship with his mother a couple of times. We got to talk about Frances Cobb, played by Deirdre O'Connell, who we've discussed the parallels with The Sopranos for people who watched that show. And Tony and his mother had a similarly contentious relationship, but Frances Cobb is so much more than Livia Soprano ever was. She can be funny and sweet and strong, and we actually, like, the whole time you just wanted Tony to kill his mom. But in this, Oz's mom was completely different. She was more present in a lot of ways. And then when we got to the flashbacks where she's playing with the kids, and like, we really got to know her character in a very different way. And again, with the way the story of his psychosis, evil, whatever you want to call it, plays out, she's just such a tragic character by the end of this thing.
When she says, I had enough for all of you. That, other than Vic's moment, that's the most heartbreaking moment of the entire show. Like, I had enough love for all of you. I had enough everything for all of you. You didn't have to do this. That broke my heart completely. She's so good.
But the reveal that she knew all along too, I was like, shit, there's nobody in this show that's truly good and innocent, because she raised a monster.
Well, but she knew, but he was all she had left.
Yeah.
As a mother, when she had that conversation with Rex Calabrese, where he's like, I can take care of this for you, and she's going to let him do it.
Mm-hmm.
And then they go out and they have that one sweet moment, and she decides this is what I've got left. I got to work.
It's not just a sweet moment, because it's not like, she's with her son and
you're right. Sweet was not the right word.
Sweet. I mean, she's touched by the fact that he's like, I'm gonna do everything for you. I'm gonna do things for you. I'm gonna make your life great. And
Desperate might be a better word.
And she's like, I'm gonna use him. I'm gonna use this kid. I don't want to kill him. I'm gonna use him to get what I want.
You think that was the decision, not like he really wants to do this for me. I can't, like, you think it was even more
selfish.
Yeah.
Yes, I do.
Okay.
I think it was in the middle. I think it was more like Dave said, this is all I have left.
Mm-hmm.
My
It's a big
babies
decision
are gone.
to kill your kid.
Yeah. And like, you know, I mean, I don't know, what would you do if you find out that your child is just like born bad? And like, how do you deal with that? How do you turn off loving them or
I thought another,
whatever? I don't know.
I thought another interesting thing about that was Rex Calabrese. Like when Penguin's talking about him, he's like a hero of the community, a pillar of the community. And then here he is talking to Penguin
right.
Yes.
about like, I'll take care of this kid for you. And you realize that they're all pieces of shit. Like,
right.
But the other thing about that is Rex tells the mom, like, look, I can use a kid like this. This kid is amazing. Like he's got it. Like he basically sells her on the idea, like, this kid can go places under my tutelage.
He is the John Cena of murderous scumbag gangsters.
Yeah.
He has got it. He can go to the big show.
I think he sells it on her, and that's when she realizes I can get something out of this.
Yeah.
Or maybe she just wants to punish him. You know? Maybe
and there's that too.
Yeah.
She does hate him. She does.
And the dynamic at the beginning of the show, because those of us who have seen The Sopranos like know that dynamic between Olivia and Tony. This seems like at the beginning of the show she has the power over him. Mm-hmm. That she is has the fear and the like, that he's beholden to her. And we see over the course of time that he created that whole dynamic that is all him.
Yeah.
Yeah. At first you think it's this mother guilt thing. And
like,
damn. Yeah. And then you realize that, like, yeah, he did. He turns everybody into a monster. It's what he does, you know, and he creates her. And the only thing that she can do is be like, you know, why haven't you gotten me that penthouse yet? Why aren't you good enough yet? Because it's the only way she can get a dig in. It's the only way she can get back and get any power over him. In that situation.
Well, when she, in that first episode, when he goes to visit her and she, what is she says, what are you, a little pussy boy? I was like, whoa. It's like, Ma, don't call me that. and that was actually the first time I thought Vic was going to get killed, because he saw that relationship, and I was like, Oz isn't going to let somebody see this.
Right.
I think in her way, though, like the way she speaks to him like that, she knows this is the only way he's going to be successful. Like, he will be successful as a psycho crime boss. And so she does stuff to make him successful.
Yeah.
That's the only way she knows to mother him.
Yeah, it's not like
to motivate him.
Like, this is all he's got.
So we've got to move on through some other characters, because we got a couple more great ones to talk about. Clancy Brown as Salvatore Maroni.
Amazing.
I was delighted. Ended up being in the show way more than I thought he was going to be. When he first showed up in prison, I thought, well, we'll probably have like 2 or 3 scenes with him, and I'll be happy to see him. But he ended up being a significant presence in the show, and man, he's just so good.
He's incredible. The whole scene with them making dinner was like amazing.
It was wild. The fact that he's just in their house, they're working together, it's fine. And he's telling them, he's great.
Sal Maroni as a character, of course, does have a history in DC Comics for creating Two-Face. He's the one that throws acid on him, on Harvey Dent. So obviously in this Batman universe, that does not happen.
Right.
So they definitely play around with that here.
But
Or
it has varied though. There have been times when it was one of Maroni's men. There have been times when it was some other character. Like it's been told different ways.
Sure. But I mean, but originally, I mean, that's
Right.
where the character came from. Yeah. And traditionally it's usually him. So I did find that kind of interesting that they kind of threw him in there, but and Clancy Brown is just, I mean, he's always solid.
Yeah.
I love the decision to have him die from a heart attack. It was so good.
Oh, the scene was incredible because you got this really bizarre conflict with Oz where he's getting his ass beat.
Yeah.
Like chances are he was going to die.
Yeah.
And then he sees Maroni collapse. And even though nobody's watching, he starts yelling at him like, get up. What are you doing? I'm like, who are you performing for right now?
Himself.
But it's part of his psychosis.
He's
And then
view of himself.
Yeah. And then shoots him, brings him outside and puts on the show.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Amazing. Absolutely amazing. We've already talked about Dr. Julian Rush a few times, played by Theo Rossi, who is a tremendous actor who's been all over the place.
Oh, he's awesome.
Yeah,
And
he's awesome.
I completely forgot that red hypnosis light that they used on Francis in later episodes was introduced in the second episode.
Yeah.
And the only other note I have about him, he was slimy and uncomfortable to watch, and just everything about him was gross. The only other note I have is clearly inappropriate touching.
Yeah, he's the only male character that seems to really care about the and all he wants to do is get in her pants. He's creepy. And if you don't, feel for Sophia's journey here, it's like, I mean, she just doesn't have anywhere to turn to.
Well, it's funny you mentioned her in some ways being sort of reminiscent of Harley Quinn's story, but to me, Julian Rush was really the Harley Quinn of this one as the doctor who became obsessed with the patient. Like it felt like a little bit of a role reversal in that way.
Absolutely. Yeah, there's ties there for sure. And it's definitely sort of reminiscent there of all of that. Yeah. It's hard not to, I mean, whenever you go into, Arkham Asylum or see a psychiatrist in Gotham, you're like, okay, we're going to hit the Harley country.
I wouldn't be surprised if he made Magpie too. Like that he's up there doing some sketchy Hugo Strange stuff.
Yeah. I still wonder, like, he's got to show up in something else, right? Because I feel like he didn't do quite enough to, like, justify being in the show for no reason beyond the show. You know what I mean?
There's no telling. It's funny with these kinds of things where it interweaves between a television show and a movie or other media formats. You just don't know what the intent is. And at this point, maybe the creative team doesn't even really know for sure because you don't know what contracts are going to be. You don't know how the story is going to evolve. Like they may have, obviously at this point, they've got a pretty solid central idea for the Batman 2 because I think they start shooting in January. But things could change or evolve, or there's no telling. Like at one point, he might not have been available. And if they find out like, oh, his other project didn't work out, let's bring Rush back and do a little something with him. Like,
I think it'd be really cool if they do Court of Owls, if they have him kind of brainwash Talon, and that's how they make Talon.
That would be cool. Because they're not going to do the resurrection thing.
Yeah.
And I definitely, I mean, I like the actor fine, but I don't think he's a big enough presence to be someone on the caliber of like Scarecrow or anything like that.
No, I would agree with that. But he's definitely enough to be, as you guys are saying, kind of the behind the scenes at Arkham guy who's making people even bigger problems than they already are.
Yeah, he's kind of like a dollar saver Hugo Strange.
And that's the thing is I don't want him to actually have the Hugo Strange role because I want to see Hugo Strange.
Yeah.
But we're also getting into territory where there's going to have to be an episode at some point like The Simpsons did it, where it's always Gotham did it because Gotham did everything.
They did they did every single villain.
Pretty much did, yeah.
Real quick, Luca Falcone, played by Scott Cohen, who I found to be the most gangstery looking guy in the whole show. Like he looked straight out of he didn't look straight out of one of the first two Godfathers, but he looked straight out of Godfather 3.
He was a little Goodfellas.
Milos Grappa, who I believe was the consigliere, played by James Madio. Didn't have a lot to do, but he was there. Detective Marcus, who was the retired cop addicted to drops, who got the best exit of anybody in the show. If you don't know off the top of your head who I'm referring to, for anybody watching or listening, he was the dirty cop who kind of was helping the bad guys in a couple of different ways. And at the end of the show, he's outside when Oz escapes with his mother. He's standing outside, just dropping up. And as soon as he finishes, his face just explodes in a red mist because Oz just shot him in the back of the head, which is exactly what he had coming.
Yeah.
Someone who I was also pleased got more screen time than I initially expected. Shura Agdashlu, which I'm sure I just slaughtered her name, but as Nadia Maroney, Sal Maroney's wife. Phenomenal in everything that she does. I was happy we got as much of her as we did here. Very strong character, certainly developed more than she would have been even 10 years ago. Carla Vitti, played by Alexa Palladino, who was just afraid of Sophia. Like that was her entire character arc.
Yeah.
Gia Vitti, who we spoke of before, played by Kinsey Gray. Chief Mackenzie Bach, who was also in The Batman, played by Con O'Neill.
He was good. I like that guy. Him and Maroney's wife, they smoke a lot.
Yeah.
There's only a handful of characters and actors who are from who were both in Batman and in this, right?
Yeah,
there's only
Gordon just he's also busy
making the bat sound.
Yes. Robert Lee Ling as Link Zai, who's the Triad second in command, who gets some pretty juicy stuff. He gets the meeting with Oz, where he basically just doesn't buy anything he's selling, and I love another of Oz's super talents is being able to present himself as the lesser of two evils.
Yeah.
Every interaction he has with someone else where he's trying to cut some kind of deal, nobody ever wants to work with him, but he is able to sell that, look, I'm your best option.
And he brought beer. He's got beer. Come on.
And he's got beer.
Yeah, I like that.
Sal wasn't bringing you a six-pack when he wants to talk to you.
Tina Falcone, who was played by Tess Salto and who got a great scene when she is in bed with Johnny Ziti. And Sophia says, Tina, don't forget your panties.
Yeah.
Francois Chow, who you may know as Shredder from the 1990 Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie as Feng Zhao, the head of the Triad.
Yeah.
Nadine Malouf as Summer Gleason, whose character originated in Batman the Animated Series. She was a reporter on that throughout the run of the show, basically. And in this, she is the reporter that aims Sophia at the Hangman. Yeah. Which we mentioned that the Hangman story comes from Long Halloween, comes from Dark Victory.
Yeah.
And in it, Sophia is the Hangman. Spoiler alert, sorry. It's still a great story. Go read it if you haven't. But she is taking revenge on everybody that helped conspire against her father. Right. And then Carmine Falcone, we already mentioned, was played by Mark Strong, who to step into John Turturro's shoes and completely carry the role.
Oh yeah, he did great.
Is amazing.
He even looked like Turturro. Perfect. Yeah.
Yeah. And then finally, Arya Shagasemi as Taj Maroney, who was basically just a douchebag piece of shit who somebody was going to end up setting on fire if Oz.
I hated him until they set him on fire, and I was like, "Damn, dude! Wow, that's a lot.
A little much."
He had it coming. Look at that guy.
He just shot him.
he was.
Got him.
I was like, why is he wet? Oh no.
So before we get to the wrap up, which we are headed into now, any final thoughts about any of the characters, any big moments from the show that we didn't talk about?
Yeah, I really liked it when all the underlings were rising up, like all of the like the triad guys, like the Irish guys, like how they had them all just being like, the second in command, slicing the throats and killing them, and I love that.
Yeah,
like this is a great wrap up.
I feel like they should have been playing a Springsteen song under that.
Yeah, I really dug that. That was like a really cool part of it. That happens so fast; it's easy to forget about, but it's cool, and I feel like it will have some repercussions on what happens.
Yeah, at the next meeting, all the seconds are now on top, and they're going to go to the meeting, and they're going to be surprised that Vic's not there. That Vic's not there instead of the Penguin. They'll be like, "Vic, what happened? Well, you were supposed to do your." Oh.
About Beth. I know that I know it had to happen, but gosh, that was hard.
I feel like they really wanted to make it clear he is not redeemable at all.
Yeah. I mean, that was the final. That was it.
Yeah.
Can we also mention too, because we talked about the mother, but that last shot where she's basically trapped in this loft of the Penguins
after he promised he would, if
you're coming down her cheek, and you kind of feel like he's finally presenting her with the view of the city, the penthouse.
He promised her that he would pull the plug.
Yep.
That he wouldn't let her live without her consciousness.
Yep.
And it almost is like, in Penguin's mind is like I think he'd rather have his mom like this.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Well, and technically he didn't break his promise because you can by the fact that she's got a tear running down her cheek, there's something in there.
She's aware.
She's aware, and she's just trapped, and that's the most terrifying thing I can think of.
It's Metallica's One all over again.
Yeah, not to beat a dead horse, but like
Oz would do that.
Yes, he would. Yeah, he would beat a dead horse. He would beat a dead. But like, it's about creating the idea of Oz to himself. So
and now he's got Eve to dress up like the mom to tell him that he's proud, so he's got everything he wants.
But he can say, "I gave my ma the penthouse overlooking the city," right? And like you said, like now she's completely under his control. She can't talk back. She can't argue with him. Now he has everything he wanted. He has his ma. He can give her, everything that she needs and wants and this and that, even though she's just like subsisting off of, like shakes and stuff.
In a way, he's even more responsible for her than he was before.
He gets to take care of her
power and the caretaking.
Yeah, exactly.
I like how that penthouse looks simultaneously really nice and shitty at the same time.
Yeah,
it looks like awesome and run the fuck down.
Well, his apartment was so bizarre to me because it looked like a weird shithole loft, but then it's got like Metropolis bank doors going to his bedroom.
It's wild. I love it.
It's Gotham.
Yeah, it is Gotham. It is Gotham.
But it's like the Penguin. I mean, you can dress him up, right?
Yeah.
But I bet he still smells bad.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like Sophia makes a couple comments about it, like especially when she brings like Maroni in there. She's like, I know it's classy. Like she's like, can you believe this guy? But to him, he's like, look at my apartment.
Yeah.
And that shot at the bat signal at the end, is that the first time we didn't see that in the movie, right? That's the first time we've seen the bat. So it's a new thing.
We see it in the movie.
Oh, do we? Okay.
Yeah, at the beginning where they're talking about.
Oh, that's right.
I come from the shadows. Like lights up and all the criminals.
Right, because it lights up and then we don't know what dark alley is going to pop out from. That's really cool. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
For some reason, I just had it in my mind that was the first experience of the bat symbol, and I've seen that movie multiple times.
I know, me too, Ryan. I was like, it feels like the first time.
It does. It feels like the first.
Well, I think what it is it feels like it has more significance.
Yeah.
This time to this world. Obviously, anybody who knows Batman, which is almost everybody on the planet at this point, the bat signal has a certain significance. But in this world, in the Batman, in the movie, it was kind of only used as like, oh yeah, there's the bat signal. But here it was used as, you better watch the fuck out, Oz, because he sees you now.
Yeah,
you think you've got everything? Yeah, just
Right.
look out the window.
You're right, because all the drop heads and everything in the beginning are looking up at it. Yeah, you're right. Yeah,
it has significance now.
Yeah.
All right. Anything else?
I want them to. I would love them if they signed off on a series of other Bat villains origin stories like this. Yes, please. Yes, please. Yes.
Well, that's
please.
we'll get to that. We'll get to that. That's going to be part of our wrap up.
I do want to point out, and it's kind of a downer, but the portrayal of his mom having Lewy body disease. It's a disease my father has, and that's what it looks like. And they clearly did a lot of research on like the blanking out and the losing control and things like that. And so I thought they did really well with that. And it definitely threw me when they finally said it, because I've been watching it. I was like, well, this is kind of familiar. And then when she's in the hospital, Penguin yells, she's got Lewy body. And I was like, yep, there it is.
Oh, wow. Yeah. So it's an interesting that they waited till that late in the show to specifically address it.
Mm-hmm.
I think in this day and age, it's one of the improvements in media is when they're going to portray conditions, whether they're physical, mental, or whatever. I think more thought and research and care goes into those portrayals than used to.
Yeah.
So to get into our wrap up, Mike, you kind of already segued into this a little bit, but if you could pick a villain from not necessarily one of Batman's, but from the DC universe to receive this kind of miniseries treatment, who would you choose?
Well, my first instinct was to say the Riddler, because I just didn't. That was the only thing I really didn't like about the Batman movie, is the way that the Riddler was depicted.
Mm-hmm.
And that's it's really unfortunate. But I would, as far as another baddie, I don't know. I'd have to give that one some thought, because I mean, this one is so complete and so well done that I would like to. I don't know. I'd have to give that some thought. Because, but my first thought was the Riddler, because I just like I said, can we do him over, please?
And then this has been on my wish list forever, because I think a TV series, I don't know, it might be a little harder to get mileage out of this, but with good creators, you can do anything. I desperately want to see a live action Kirk Langstrom story, because I think Man-Bat has so much potential to look into. And look, Batman the Animated Series did a fantastic job with it, but I think there's a lot of potential there, especially because Man-Bat is a character that you can fully explore in one serving, whether it's a movie or a series. It's not like Joker, where you're going to be left at the end like, oh man, they're never going to bring Joker back. How disappointing is that? Because that's his whole thing. He comes back. Like with Man-Bat, I think you can satisfy most people's needs for Man-Bat with one installment or one story. And I would really be interested to see that. And I think there's some other things you could tie into it. His family relationship is there as well. I would love to see that. I
think, all right, I've had time to think now. So, Victor Freeze.
Oh, classic. Yeah.
I mean, especially if you use the mythology and the emotion that the animated series put into him, and really bring that out, I think you could really tell a compelling story.
No, I think you go New 52, where his whole backstory was just a lie and he's just a bad guy. Don't do that.
That would work. Like I actually, that was going to be my answer. I think the New 52 one, I kind of like the fact that he was just a crazy guy that worked at Wayne Enterprises, and they fired him and pulled the plug on his wife, and he went fucking ballistic. Like I kind of like that.
Mm-hmm.
Now, to be fair, I prefer the animated series one, but I'm saying in this world, I think that actually would work better.
Well, and you might be right. And again, with the right creators behind it, if the story is told well and the characters are portrayed well, that's really all that matters.
Yeah.
And we've seen this is another point of conversation I wanted to get to. Actually, I'm just going to, so I don't forget, I'll put it right here because I do want to get back around to everybody else. Let's go ahead over to Nicole. Is there a particular villain or character that you'd like to see?
I think that seeing Clayface done in like kind of a realistic, somewhat grounded story would be really interesting to me.
I feel like the new cartoon, like they kind of did that, and it would totally work. I think.
Yeah.
Where
like,
the classic Hollywood actor kind of thing.
Well, I always wanted Bruce Campbell as Clayface because I felt like he could play the guy, the B actor who kind of never made it to the next level.
That's
I love that. Yeah, that's genius.
Especially after seeing him in what was that? The show that just aired,
Hysteria.
Yeah. Yep.
Which overall I didn't really care for, but I thought his performance was the best thing he's ever done.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think that would be a really interesting, possibly fun depiction. So I would I think Clayface would be super cool.
What about you, Beth?
Well, having little to no knowledge of the comics, I was trying to watch the Batman movie again the other day, and I agree with Mike. It's the Riddler destroys that movie for me. Paul Dano is not the right choice. He's not good. I don't like the depiction. That movie, could have been an hour less in length and improved drastically by just leaving the Riddler out of it and saving him for something else.
He did very little actual riddling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then they put him in a cell next to the Joker. Arkham is terrible.
Yeah, great idea.
Schweck, what about you?
So I know they just did him in Rises, but I think having a long story about Two-Face could be really good. And really explore Harvey Dent more. And he's got some problems before half his face gets burned out.
Yeah, I would love. I mean, he would be a great candidate for a full series because that, again, you could really get into the character and how things fall apart.
Mm-hmm.
I really love the way they handled him in Cape Crusader.
Yes,
I thought that was really excellent.
Since you did Freeze, I'm gonna say Firefly because the first Batman comic I ever read, Firefly was the villain, and I think. Crazy arsonist running around in a fly costume is fucking awesome. Like, so I'm all about it. Like,
okay, let's go. I like it. And again, with the right writer, anything can be good.
Yeah, was it Gotham that portrayed him as like a deranged, like ex-firefighter? Like, I kind of like that.
I think so.
It was.
Yeah, and I'm down with that.
Or was that him in Arkham City?
You know what? I don't remember, but it was.
I think in Arkham City, all we really got was that he was an arsonist, and then you had to do that really annoying chase him around the city.
Yeah, I think
we got a ton of backstory.
I think it was Gotham that he was like a deranged ex-firefighter that like had a burned face and everything. I was like, yeah, I'm down with that.
Well, I had a whole list of other points to hit, but we have come to the end of the show. We can only spend so much time talking about 8 hours of television. But before we go, everybody here has other things going on. We'll start up top with, we'll go from right to left. Beth, what are you up to? Where can we find you online?
I am co-host of Execute Chapter 66. We are a Star Wars book club podcast. Ryan is also one of the hosts. We have Instagram. We have Facebook. Please follow Execute Chapter 66 and download wherever fine podcasts are free.
Schweck, not to be redundant, but
Same place. It's real easy. Come hear about Luke Skywalker's strong farm hands.
I am dying to hear about that. Is that episode out yet?
No, we just recorded that one.
All right, I'm going to keep an eye out for that link. I need to hear that. Nicole Gould, Cadaver, where can we find you online? What are you up to?
Not up to too much right now, but you can find me online at Battle Cougar on Instagram. It's really the only one that I really monitor or do anything with these days. But I'm just sort of living life, doing stuff.
Full of cute dog and kitten content.
Yes.
We need more popular kitten pics.
We do. Popular Kitten's been suffering because unpopular Watson has been jerk to her, but it's fine. We're getting there.
Ryan Cadaver.
Yeah. So both of us are doing pretty cool ass video production stuff now. So if anybody needs a music video project, want me to film your show, whatever, like hit us up. It's Cadaver Video. And then my band Neon Warlords and Casket Creatures has a couple shows coming up. So yeah, just check it out.
Yeah, put over that Casket Creatures show. That's a big deal.
Yeah, so Casket Creatures.
December 7th?
Yeah, let me look up the date real quick.
December 7th, Gainesville, Georgia at Blackstrap Rock Hall.
Yes.
A legendary Casket Creatures performance that has never happened before, and you'll probably never have the opportunity to see in this way again.
No, it's going to have almost every single member that's ever been a part of the band. We're going to play everything that we've ever done. And it'll be our last show in Georgia for probably at least a year because we're going to go into the studio. We're going to kind of rebrand. We're going to kind of take a step back from live shows and kind of come back swinging. But we're going to take some time off of at least Georgia shows. This is going to be your only time ever to hear stuff off the very first album, second album, like every single thing, and then all the new stuff too. So it's going to be really cool. It's going to be a lot of fun. Be a lot of bugs that night. It's gonna be like a complete history of the Casket Creatures in our 15 years of playing music.
I'm really excited for that Pinkerton cover album that you were telling me about.
Yes,
it's gonna be really good.
No idea what you're talking about.
Well, you were pretty drunk.
Oh, nice.
Mike Gordon, what are you up to? Where can we find you online?
You can find me online. New Legend Mike is my handle on most things, including the one that everybody's jumping onto, Blue Sky, although I haven't really done much there. But podcasting wise, again, just started a show this year called Bat Chums with co-host Drew Leiter, who is one of the hosts of the Earth Station DCU podcast, and we are going through the 60s series episode by episode by episode, and we're almost done with season 1, and then going into the movie, and then going into season 2. We've had a lot of fun revisiting this series, which I haven't watched in its completion in years. So it's been really, really fun to do. Also, you can find me on Earth Station Who talking about Doctor Who episodes, past and present, as well as the Dragon Con Report, which we're doing our last episode next week, this month, and then we're taking a month off, and then we'll be back to talk all about Dragon Con 2025 starting in January.
Well, thank you, everyone, for hanging out, talking about Penguin. Mostly, though, thank you. What an amazing crew to have for the return of the Needless Things podcast.
I'm so excited for that.
I've, you know what, folks are. I have gotten response already, and that's pretty nice. I appreciate it. So everyone stay tuned. Follow Needless Things channel on Instagram. Subscribe to the Needless Things YouTube channel. Follow, tell all your friends about it. We got a lot of exciting stuff coming. If you have been enjoying the Creators series that's been happening lately, stay tuned for more of that too. Lots and lots happening over the next year. So thank you guys for hanging out. Thank you, everybody, for listening. We will talk to you all again soon.
Smash that like button if you like Needless Things.